Welcome to ACP, the Amazon Connect podcast. This is the show that focuses on Amazon Connect and related technologies. I'm your host, Tom Morgan, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, AWS Solution Architect and Contact Center Consultant, Alex Baker. Find out more about Cloud Interact by visiting us at cloudinteract.io. It's time for another ACP, and we are back. We are refreshed, and we are looking forward to talking for another episode. Alex is with me. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hi, Tom. Yep, good. Thank you. Yeah, also refreshed. Just had a week off. Now back at work, ready to talk more Amazon Connect stuff.
Excellent, excellent. Before we really get into the meat of this episode, let's have a little starter, and let's start with any exciting news items that we may have missed since the last episode. So, Alex, what have we got? What have we been missing out on?
Yeah, I feel like we've, for various reasons, guests and what have you, we've not done the news section for a little while. We have been putting out monthly Amazon Connect What's New posts on LinkedIn, so this kind of stuff we try and summarize in there. But just to pick out a couple of the things in the Amazon Connect release notes over the past 2 months, so Jan and Feb, we've got some good updates around dashboards. That real-time dashboard capability is constantly growing. So you've got a real-time dashboard for agent activity, for example, that was released in January. Going a little bit away from that, the sort of tabular format that was previously, well, is still there, but that was previously available in Connect. You're getting more of a visual looking dashboard, which you can tailor things like the widgets that you have on it, the metrics that display on the widgets, and then things like your thresholds, and you can start to have red, amber, green statuses on different metrics. There are also metrics around things like, so Amazon appear to be sort of bringing Lex bot creation, making it a lot more tightly knit into Amazon Connect itself, so you can configure bots from directly within the Connect console, but you can also look at dashboards for them as well. So you can, within Connect, check out your bot performance, look at things like missed utterances and that kind of thing, so you can do sort of ongoing tuning of your bots. We've also got the ability to evaluate agent performance for email contacts now. So up until now, it was voice and chat. With the introduction of email fairly recently, it's nice to see that now you can evaluate your agent performance on the email channel.
Makes sense. Yep, makes sense.
Around reInvent, it was mentioned that there was a bit of a revamp of the outbound campaign, outbound dialer type functionality, and one that's related to that. There's a currently in preview, but preview of persistent agent connections for faster call handling. So I think some of the feedback that I'd heard in the past when using the outbound dialer, certainly in certain locations, is that when it was doing the setup of the call, sometimes as the customer, the recipient, you might hear a bit of a delay as everything was getting connected. And in theory, this should sort of try and reduce that delay as much as possible. So it might just make it a bit of an easier thing to get through compliance and to start using that functionality. I know it's something that with the revamp, a couple of our customers are quite keen on taking another look at the outbound campaign.
That's good to know. Yeah, I was going to say, so if you've discounted or you've tried it and you haven't liked it, or even if you weren't really aware of that delay, if you didn't get the results that you wanted, maybe try it again, because it sounds like that experience is a little bit slicker, a little bit more natural than it previously has been.
Yeah, definitely worth looking at again. We've got one around performance evaluations. So this arguably sort of fairly small release, but you can automatically send email notifications to agents when their contacts have been evaluated, and that's now native. That's something that you could set up yourself previously, using Lambda functions, SES, that kind of thing. But it is something that is now native, so you can put in an automatic notification for any evaluation that's been carried out, or maybe evaluations with a particularly low score. You could send a notification to the agent to say, this needs some attention, please arrange a coaching session with your supervisor, that kind of thing.
I can imagine that's quite important, actually. It's important to keep, like, it's no good as an agent saying, like, it's time for your review and you've done rubbish, over the past 6 months. It's like, well, you never told me I was doing rubbish, like automating that process of in the moment, day by day, keeping on top of it. That feels quite important.
Definitely. Yep. That's a really nice little addition. We've got this one's around forecasting, capacity planning and scheduling. And I know this was something that when I mentioned it to one of our colleagues, he was really excited about for one of our customers in particular, because this was something that it had been a bit of a sticking point for them. But you can now configure which states an agent can be in when adhering to their schedule. So, for example, you can map a schedule activity like work, whatever you want to call it, to multiple different agent statuses. So if you're in, as the agent, if you're in available, or if you're in back office work, or if you're in an outbound code, all of those can map to that schedule activity work, rather than there being this sort of one-to-one mapping, like you have to be in available or you have to be in a certain code. So yes, another
good,
small but important, nice functionality improvement there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's all those things they come out like it's the V2, V3, V4 iteration of a feature, isn't it? Where you sort of find these things and fill the gaps. So yeah, it's good.
Nice. Yeah, great. Nice. What else we got? So there's targeting multiple agent proficiencies in a single routing step. So this is around that sort of more granular skills-based routing. Haven't played with this at all, but just reading off the notes, so you can target up to 4 different combinations of agent proficiencies per routing step. So by using up to 3 OR conditions, the routing tries to match a contact with 4 different types of agent, which increases the possibility of finding a suitable match. So yeah, you can really start to put in some granular skills-based routing around maybe the particular level of training that an agent has on a certain language, or their account management skills, their ability to deal with something like tax questions, that kind of thing.
That's cool. Nice.
And the final one just to take a look at, and actually it's only now that I've noticed this one, there are some new evaluation metrics available. And just taking a quick look through those, we've now got average evaluation score. So this is, let me just step back a sec. The following contact evaluation-driven metrics are available on historical metrics reports.
Okay.
So you got average evaluation score, average weighted evaluation score, automatic fails %. That one, that's certainly one that we've developed custom reporting for people in the past, because there wasn't anything sort of available out of the box. It was quite nice to see that in the natively in Connect. And then another one for evaluations performed. So yeah, I think on my point of we've developed quite a bit of custom reporting around evaluation metrics, just because there wasn't really that much for it out of the box. But obviously Amazon have seen that is a bit of a gap as well, and started to bring those in, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. So over time, those things get put into the box. That's fine. And then that's our job, is to fill the gaps whilst they're there, and then to sort of step away and step aside as the gaps get filled and go and fill other gaps. So yeah, definitely. That's good. And
sorry, the other one to mention around that actually is, and we mentioned dashboards at the start of this section, an agent performance evaluations dashboard as well. So just to tie that up there, again, improving that out of the box experience, and being able to go into your dashboards and check out how people are performing and their evaluations.
Yeah, good. It feels like this whole evaluation thing is just growing and growing and becoming more and more important, and more and more sort of central, and completely makes sense, because it's such an important part of obviously keeping a quality bar high.
Yeah, we've spoken about it. We've done whole episodes around quality. It is still one of the areas that I'm really excited about, because of the introduction of the capability to automate and to be able to do much more than what was traditionally maybe 2 evaluations per agent per month, or whatever your metrics were. Being able to move that much closer to 100% to evaluate in some way, I think that's great.
Definitely. Oh, well, thank you for the news roundup. This episode, we're going to be talking all about user adoption. which is a kind of underrated but really important subject. We did talk about it a little bit at the back end of last year, but it's definitely worth spending a whole episode talking about, we thought, because it's quite easy sometimes, I think, as technical people. Alex and I are both techies, and it's easy to get caught up in the technical delivery of something like Amazon Connect and to really just focus in on that and get that bit done. And then to be really surprised and a bit annoyed and upset if the whole project is not deemed as success afterwards, because even though it was technically perfect, actually nobody used it because you didn't bring people along for the journey. So that user adoption part is really important. It's really important in the outcome of a successful project. And so it's definitely something you should be thinking about.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the fact that people like your agents are going to be interacting with it much more frequently than we do, or the agent interface part of it. So it's got to make their lives easier. It's got to be understood, easy to use. They've got to get the best out of it.
Definitely. And that's what we're going to be talking about this episode, really, the kind of how-to of user adoption for Amazon Connect. So let's start at the very beginning. I think probably before you'd even show agents what an Amazon Connect looks like, right at the very beginning of that journey, you've decided to move your contact center from whatever it's doing to Amazon Connect, or maybe you don't have a contact center, you just have people answering phones, because that's quite common as well. Like that's how people, it's your company's grown, it started small, you didn't need a contact center, so they're currently just answering phones. It's a much smaller organization, and they kind of decided that they've grown and now's the time for a contact center. And so you've decided on Amazon Connect as the technical person, but you now have to sort of sell that to your agents. What's the process there, and what's involved in doing that, and how much of it, I guess, how much of it needs to be technical, or is it more about just keeping them involved and letting them know, and how early on do you tell them, essentially?
I guess from your own perspective, especially if you're going in sort of fairly new to it, go and make the most of all of the resources that are out there, first of all, on Connect, so that you know the ins and outs of it yourself as much as possible, and you know about the why are you doing it, why have you chosen Connect, what are the benefits, why is it good for your business, so that when you go and talk to the business users about it, you can put across a good case for that and make it compelling. I think people are sometimes resistant to change, especially if you've had, and we've seen it with some of our customers, they've had legacy systems in place for 5-10 years or even longer. They use it day in, day out. That is quite a significant change to your daily work, isn't it? If you're that system that you're interacting with constantly for your 8 hours at work, if it's going to change, understandably, people are sometimes resistant to that. So yeah, I think my point is, if you're going in as the product owner or project lead, make sure you're fully sort of comfortable in talking the benefits of the change.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. People worry sometimes about change, because also it's change because someone's moved my cheese and I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I think there's a worry as well, and I think probably justified as well, that the process gets built up over time. We do things the way we do them, and part of that is because that's how we've always done them, but part of it also is because there's a really good reason for doing it that way. And if we take that away, we might remember the hard way why we did it the way we did. So there's all these little business processes that need to be sort of captured and thought about. And I think, that comes across sometimes as resistance to change. So it's kind of well-intentioned resistance to change. I think one of the nice things about Amazon Connect is that, and we've talked about this before, because of its consumptive model and how easy it is to spin up, I guess, whilst you're building out what will become the production contact center, I guess there's no reason why you can't just sort of spin up a test instance just to get people a bit familiar with it. And so I'm thinking maybe people who are coming from not from an existing contact center, maybe, and they're just used to answering the phones, just so they can see how that flow is slightly different and get used to it, and just sort of start to look around a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. Like you say, we've mentioned that as a big benefit of Connect quite a bit in the past. I know from working on previous systems, sometimes you'd have the concept of a, whatever you want to call it, a model office, I remember calling it, or a test area. But yeah, the sooner you're able to get hands-on with the products, and get people working with it and figuring out what the differences are and what the workarounds are, the better. And it is, as we know, it is pretty easy to go in and set up an Amazon Connect contact center.
And I think that really helps with the familiarity of how the product works as well, but probably doesn't. I'd be interested to see what you think about this. Does that completely replace the need for like more formalized training, or do you think the training as part of this process is still needed and important?
The scale of, we talk to smaller customers, we talk to larger customers. When you get to certainly into the enterprise space, it's not practical to kind of, you've got to put some structure around things like training processes. You can't just kind of get your agents to go and have a play in the test setup and figure it out for themselves. And that's where, because we have dedicated people that deal with that sort of training and comms part of things, it's quite a big piece of work to undertake.
Yeah, makes sense. You kind of want everyone working in the same way as well. I suppose it's as much, it's partly training on Amazon Connect, but it's also partly on training in the process, right? The way to use the thing rather than just how the thing works. It's, thinking,
and that can be
different flows.
It can be quite different. Businesses can have very different processes. So we've sort of created fairly generic training decks or training programs in the past, which then we've gone into each of our customers and we've had to tailor it because they work in different ways, because we're enabling different features for them. Things like, custom agent desktops that we've put in for people, that kind of thing. Whilst it's still Amazon Connect, which is the fundamental core platform, actually there are quite a few complexities to the way that every single customer works, which means you need to really look in depth at how the training is tailored to that.
I think the other thing, so you got thinking about user adoption, you've got telling people it's coming, so you got that communication, you got training, kind of think about training and making sure everyone knows how to use the system. I think it's worth thinking through as well all the different types of people that are going to use the system, because it's not just the agents, right? And I think that, I don't know, that can easily get forgotten. It's easy to focus in on just the agents and not think about some of the other sort of personas that are going to be using the system, such as supervisors, service owners, execs. They all have requirements for data normally, but and information out of the system, and that can be a really obvious jarring gap if you don't consider it, especially if you're moving from an existing contact center that does provide those things, and the execs are used to getting their monthly Tuesday report about how the contact center is doing. If that suddenly dries up because nobody thought about it and captured it as a requirement, then it's not good.
It's a great point. Yeah. So early on, do that persona mapping, which personas kind of touch the contact center. Obviously, your agents and supervisors are the first ones that come to mind. But yeah, you've potentially got whole teams like maybe quality analysts that they access the system day to day still, but they do it in quite a different way to how your agents do. You're going to need to do some totally different training for them probably. How do they go in and access calls? How do they use the new quality scoring tools and processes that are available to them? And possibly none of that you'll train, certainly to the agents, maybe not to the supervisors either. Maybe again, it's the slight difference between some of our smaller customers and some of the larger customers. You might find that in a smaller customer, they wear more hats, as it were. So you might have the supervisors that are taking on a lot of the quality management part of the role as well. But then in some of the bigger enterprises, generally you might find that you have a QA team, a workforce management team, and they're a little bit more, maybe siloed is the wrong word, but they're more knowledgeable and experienced, and they give laser focus to what they do and not so much of the other stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yes, definitely consider all of the different people in the process. And I think it can be, I think, a good time if you're looking at user adoption, and if the input and integration of a new contact center is a really good time to do that, but it shouldn't be the only time necessarily. And what I mean by that is, you might be listening to this and thinking, well, we've got no plans. We've already got Connect already. We've got no plans to add another connect or anything. We don't need to worry about user adoption. But I think actually it's very much an ongoing thing. And especially, I think especially at the moment with AI and everything, I think user adoption comes back into the focus quite a lot because in a way, so user adoption as much as anything else is well, it's ongoing for one thing, because obviously people come and go. And so there's always training of new agents. So that user adoption part never really sort of dies. And so it's important to have the tools there for those people, whatever that looks like in your organization. And in some places, I think it can be quite informal, right? It can just be, you sit with an experienced member of staff until you figure it out, or hopefully there's a playbook or a user guide or something, so you can kind of get your hands on something to sort of help you learn. But a lot of it is in that kind of handover process. The reason for thinking about it, I think now as well with AI, is I think if you want to really take advantage of some of the stuff that AI can do, I think in order to do that, you need to have a really solid understanding of how the business works, so the business of running your contact center, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm not sure if you agree with that sort of slightly unhinged thought.
I think I see where you're going. It's something that probably is fresh in our minds because of some of the work we're doing at the moment, where we're uncovering insights into what does happen in people's call centers that maybe they're not necessarily aware of. So yeah, it's a fast evolving space, isn't it? The thing I was going to point out is that whether it's an Amazon Connect or whether it's one of the other contact center as a service providers, I think the pace of innovation is massively increased compared to maybe where it was 10 years ago, where you might be on a more of a legacy platform and it didn't really evolve much. Maybe you do a yearly update or something to the platform, but there wasn't this sort of trickle feed of updates and new capabilities. Whereas because that's happening in something like Amazon Connect, it's of benefit to you as the user, whatever your persona, to keep up to date with those things. You look at some of the things that have been released recently, things like the real-time dashboarding that's improved massively over the last few months. So if you were a Connect user, adopted Connect a year ago, you might have looked at the real-time reports back then and thought, yeah, they're not great. They're quite tabular. They don't give me the flexibility I need. Whereas now, if you're aware of those changes, you might go back in and it might sort of fit your needs a bit closer.
Yes. Yeah. I think what I was thinking is as well, like if you go and look at a well-run contact center, there's key people in there, like experienced agents, supervisors, and they have all, like they've seen it all before, right? So they know instinctively what to do. And you kind of want to somehow bottle that institutional knowledge. You want to kind of get it and write it down into something like a playbook or a guide or something and capture it for the future, because it really helps with training. But I think it will also help some of this AI stuff. And this is maybe a good time to come on to some of that AI stuff, because, we talk a lot about AI in the contact center, and I think it's tempting to think like the easy reductionist view, I think, is that AI is going to take all the jobs, but I don't think that's true. And I don't think it's true in the contact center either particularly, but I think it helps agents do better at their jobs. But I think that's where some of this capturing of this institutional knowledge, I think, can really help, because I think AI can help in taking away some of the easily repeatable things that you don't need necessarily a human, where, you could have humans be reserved for those much more complicated things, or those things that really require a human. So things that are highly, require empathy, require emotion, require intelligence, and all those things. But you can't even start to think about that if you don't know what you've got and you don't have that playbook in place. There's something as well, I think, for agents around not fearing the AI, I think, and embracing it instead to make yourself a better agent. I'm thinking about things like Amazon Q and the guides. If you were starting as an agent today, you've got, assuming your organization has this, like if you could lean into the Amazon Q, if you could lean into being able to use guides and things like that, I think you'd become, a really good agent really quickly by focusing on the things that, where you add value, and then using the AI to help you. I don't know. What do you think?
Definitely. Oh, the caveat of if it's set up well and if it backs off
Mm.
to a good source of data. But it's always, whether it's sort of going into a new job or even in existing jobs, everyone's got so much data, and you might not necessarily know where to go and look for a particular answer. If you can have something that is there in the background that's just quietly sort of feeding you some of the information that is relevant and context sensitive, then yeah, surely that should help you do your job a bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. And we talked before, I think, about this transition from being an agent to being an advisor. So you're not just in the middle between two computer systems. You're much more plugged into the data, and you're doing those kind of complex tasks that would be best served by humans. So I think there's a really big part of that for sure.
Yeah, you'd like to think that, and again, thinking about some of the work that we're doing at the moment, you'd like to think that you'd be able to take some of the more boring, repetitive elements away from the agents. I'm thinking stuff like the identification and verification. If you can abstract some of that into the IVR rather than have the agent do it every time, taking away the repetitive questions, the classic sort of, where is my order? Can I have a status on my order? That kind of stuff. Maybe sometimes agents might like that the contrast, arguably.
Yeah, you're
some
right. And
easier, some more difficult work.
yeah, there's a big part here about agent care and looking after agents and trying to reduce that churn, because yes, I think that is true. Agents sometimes just want to take an easy call, and that's totally fair, and there's no reason why that can't still happen. But I think also we can protect agents from some of those those calls that are just draining, because you've got to give out this bad news and there's nothing they can say. The news isn't changing. So yes, depending on what it is, that might be something that could be delivered in a more automated way with a sort of, we can, we're going to tell you all this stuff and you can go and talk to a person, but they're going to tell you exactly the same thing, is maybe a better fronting, rather than having these agents be shouted out all day because they're trying to deliver this bad news that nobody wants to hear. Maybe we're protecting our agents better in that way, for sure. That's interesting. So the reason I got into this at all was trying to capture like the processes that happen inside the contact center, because it really helps with user adoption, but it puts you in a really strong place for taking advantage of some of the things in Amazon Connect, such as Amazon Q, user guides for agents and things like that. It helps you sort of really take advantage of all of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's always good when we take on a project and we get to talk to somebody who's really knowledgeable about all that kind of stuff, and possibly even that they have some of it documented. Heaven forbid. Sometimes you don't get that, but sometimes you do, and maybe a great business analyst or great sort of business lead who really knows the business processes in and out, inside and out.
Yeah, definitely. Just coming back to training for a minute, because just the nuts and bolts of how to use Amazon Connect, I think AWS do workshops for like supervisor roles as well. Is that true?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So I'm a real big fan of some of the AWS online workshops, and we should put a link in the post when we put this out. But yeah, there's some great workshops that you can just go and access yourself about Connect in general. There are, I suppose, maybe a minority that are sort of aimed more at the agent population, but there are some around sort of using the agent workspace and contact control panel, probably more at a slightly more technical audience. But thinking about the quality team that we mentioned, for example, I know there's at least one workshop around that covers that kind of area. I definitely encourage people to go and check them out. They've clearly had some thought and effort put into them, and I think they're designed such that they can either be delivered just as a purely online course, or AWS themselves or a partner can deliver the workshops as a face-to-face interactive kind of thing. But yeah, I really rate those, and I'm always trying to use a bit of spare time to keep up to date with any of the new ones that are released.
Yeah, no, they're really good. And the other thing, we talk about user adoption, and I know we primarily talked about the user adoption of agents and supervisors, but if you're a techie person, don't completely zone out, because actually user adoption for techies is also a thing. Because as you know, Amazon Connect is this evergreen service. It is evolving all the time. And so there's a whole thing about how you stay up to date with developments, and then how you keep your user base up to date as well. It's all very well knowing that this new capability is out, but how do you make sure that your agents and your supervisors know, and in a way that, is trickled down and disseminated in a way that stays in line within your business processes and the way you want your agents to work, or your supervisors want your agents to work. So there's a whole process in that, isn't there? There's a whole sort of thing around not just knowing that the technology is there, but then deciding whether or not you want to use it. And then if you do decide you want to use it, how you're going to use it, and then moving operationally to actually using it.
Yeah, and probably also some considerations around compliance, for example. So I know that some of the AI tools that are being introduced are great and should improve productivity. Equally, some people, maybe legal teams, maybe those in certain countries that have tighter regulations around this kind of thing, they're a little bit more nervous about putting them in, and you get into maybe talking about what the guardrails are behind it, or what the data usage policy is from the vendor themselves. So yes, it's good to be informed for that kind of reason, so you can talk to the whole spectrum of business users, whether it's your supervisors, your managers, or your legal team.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an ongoing thing. Not to plug it too hard, but that's why we have a managed service, right? Because we know it's an ongoing thing, and we know it's not a one and done. And so we want that opportunity to come back to service owners and say, hey, did you know this thing is here? Let's have another review. Like, you could do this, you could do that. Here's what's new. And so like lean into that with training or evaluations or, other things like that. So that's why we have what we have, I think. So yeah.
It's one of the quite fun things that I enjoy about the provision of the managed service to our customers, being able to go in and have those regular sort of touch point roadmap type calls and show them, this is something new. I think you'd really benefit from this. It's nice to have that constant trickle of new exciting stuff and maybe it's just me being the sort of techie geek that wants to play with all the new stuff. But I think, that's definitely a good, interesting part of the role.
Yeah, definitely. So user adoption, it's not just for users, it's for everyone. It's ongoing. It's about keeping people involved all the way along. It's about making sure you've got the right people involved to start with, and then figuring out, the right time to tell them and how to do that. And as much as anything else, I think it's also about fully understanding the business processes that happen and how you want that to be achieved through whatever the technology is. The technology here almost doesn't matter. This isn't particularly Amazon Connect specific, although, some of the tools and stuff we've been talking about are things like, I'm thinking about Amazon Q, but actually a lot of this is repeatable across different contact centers. But yeah, trying to bottle that institutional knowledge, I think, is really important for user adoption, but also it will stand you in really good stead going forward, I think. All right. Yeah, I think we could talk all day, and we normally do, but for this time, it's time to bring this episode to an end. Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast player. That way you won't miss it. Whilst you're there, we'd love it if you would rate and review us. And if you have colleagues that you think would benefit from this content, please let them know. To find out more about how Cloud Interact can help you on your contact center journey, visit cloudinteract.io. We're wrapping this call up now, and we'll connect with you next time.